Okay. Well,
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Now That's Debatable. This is your host, Fantastic Facade. I'm joined with me, as usual, with my co-host, Geocentric Skeptic. Geo, are you with me? Can you hear me?
I can. I can hear you, Gray. How about
Perfect.
me?
I can hear you well. I'm going to pull up our stream,
Perfect.
just double check our audio sound settings, and see if we're good to go there. If you don't mind, just taking a
Testing.
little bit, you can give a little quick test. There's enough audio delay. I should be able to hear us both. I do hear us both,
One,
so we're
two,
good to go.
three. Testing. Testing. One, two,
Should
three.
be good to go. Let's go ahead and get our discussion points up. And as usual, we do have our phone number up in the upper right hand corner. They're scrolling across the screen. Feel free to give us a call. Our number is 202-888-5350. We do monitor that while we're live streaming. If you call when we're not live streaming, you're welcome to leave a voicemail, but it's not monitored when we're not paying attention to it. So, with that in mind, today we're going to be taking on the topic of abortion, which is can be a bit of a hot button issue, but I think it's just more of a just something to be aware of if you're a little more sensitive to subjects involving things like this, because obviously we're going to keep it as professional as possible. However, it is can be a bit of a sensitive topic for some people, so just something to be aware of. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Um, and with all that in mind, obviously we're streaming a day late today. Like I said, we try to keep to a schedule. It's just difficult with both of us having jobs and families and lives outside of streaming. Um, unless this takes off and gets really, really big to the point where we're financially supporting of this, our lives are always going to come first. And even then, our lives are going to come first. It's just going to be the way we use this to support our lives versus, the other way around. But so, Gio, where would you like us to start? I'm going to go ahead and just give us a friendly reminder that we're paying attention in chat. If you would like to say something in chat, please feel free to do so or give us a call. Where would you like to start, though?
I say we could talk about just family planning. At the beginning, very first one. I mean that's usually the main reason people um, consider abortion. It's because you're pregnant and for some reason you feel like you're unfit, or maybe a child is at not the right time, you know. So I guess, yeah, starting right here, family planning. That's the main cause of all of it.
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously, I think because, I mean, we grew up together, so, I mean, we've known each other a very long time. There's a bit of a stigma that comes with the phrase family planning, at least in some areas of um, I'll say religion, maybe even geography. Um,
Yeah.
so let's. I think the first thing we should do is just try to eradicate, if not clear up, some of the stigma behind the term family planning, and
Hmm.
just kind of go by the very traditional understanding of what we mean when we say so, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, so I mean, I feel like the stigma that oftentimes religion and or maybe geographically people get when they say family planning, they're specifically talking about the idea of abortion. And that's not necessarily the case. However, we're talking about abortion throughout this discussion. Family planning also involves things like you see on the back of the screen, like birth control. Um, it also involves things like planning for pregnancy. So, quite literally, family planning is that that it's planning for a family, right? So
Yeah.
the negative stigma that comes with it often is from oftentimes conservatives and oftentimes religious, sometimes maybe even geographically, but not always. But the idea that is strictly speaking about abortion when talking about family planning, and that's really not the case. And in the case of like family planning up on the screen here, although it's in relation to abortion, as an option for people planning a family or trying not to plan a family, something that should be considered and conceptualized is that it's not a negative term, because there's situations everyone in their whole life has ever looked at and said, now's not the right time to have a kid. That is family planning.
Yeah, of course.
Like that by itself is family planning. So
Yeah.
like I'll give a classic example. My parents are quite old now, and I don't think, based off of age, that my mother would be capable of giving birth, given that she's probably past the age of menopause. However, if you were to ask my parents right now, do they want another kid? The answer is undoubtedly going to be no.
Yeah.
That by itself, as simple as it seems, is a form of family planning, because my parents do not want more children. But when it comes to terms of abortion, obviously we're talking about something a little more specific, and we're going to be taking on the topic, kind of going in that direction. So,
Yeah. I mean, like, for most people, even the ones that understand that the stigma behind a term family planning is just a stigma. It's not necessarily. It's not an intrinsic. Not that abortion is an intrinsic part of family planning. They'll look at it as abortion very differently from other forms of contraception. It is. It's more of a illegitimate form of family planning, if you will.
yeah, and I mean, obviously there are a various number of methods of birth control, from everything from the very very I don't want to use the word archaic, but I can't come
Pull
up
out.
with a better term. Well, I was just gonna say
Abstinent.
abstinence. Yeah, that's like
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
yeah,
that is
that is the
the
very
original
very
form.
first form. Yeah,
Right?
the
Yeah.
original form is obviously abstinence, and then there's the old tried and true, uh, you know,
Yo.
yo-yo.
Yeah, there you
Um,
go.
yeah, that's the old tried and true method, which
Hmm.
isn't always effective by any means. There's a number of reasons, obviously, why not. And then you have things like, male condoms and things like that, where there's physical barriers that prevent such a thing from
Hmm.
happening. And then, of course, there's female contraceptives with everything from chemical inducing and or chemical altering drugs to things like IUDs, and various other ways as well. And then, of course, you can go to more of a permanent style of prevention via vasectomy and or, I will never pronounce the correct word, but when women essentially have their ovaries removed. Um, I can't pronounce the word. I apologize. If you know how to pronounce it in a good way, just write it up there in chat. But it's a very complicated word. Essentially, when women have their ovaries removed, which means they no longer produce eggs. So those are definitely more permanent ways to ensure that pregnancy doesn't happen. These are all styles and types and ways to plan for families. There's also ways to plan for children, where you say, okay, well, we're going to actively try to have a child. And I know friends that have had lots of trouble doing it, and I know friends that have had great ease at succeeding, and not
Yes.
necessarily not necessarily either
My
of them
wife
with
and I
horrible.
has very great ease.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
very, very easy for us.
yeah. And I mean, I
So,
worked with a good friend of mine. I won't mention their name just for privacy purposes, but I
yeah.
mentioned that they had one child, and they've tried for 4 years since, and no success. So it's possible to plan around it, and it's possible to plan for it. And all this obviously goes into the idea of family planning, and just kind
Yeah,
of
but
the idea
the
of
the, the
treatment
very
itself.
the huge difference with abortion is that it's seen as a lack of planning.
Yeah, yeah.
They
People
they'll
seem
look
to
at it
kind
like,
of.
oh no, you messed up, so now you're just resorting to this because you failed to do such and such prior to the event.
Yeah, it's kind of seen as like a
So,
last resort or a last way out. The final or last option, and that's not always, and I don't even think I would say it's usually the case in abortions that take place today.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I agree. I remember like when I was first, I guess, exposed to uh, what abortion was. I remember we used to talk about this sometimes in high school. It was always like super one sided. Um, I think in college is when they tried to give us a more objective view of it, but even then, it wasn't that objective considering the school that
Yeah.
that you and I both went to.
Yeah.
But I remember they showed us this documentary, and it was about Margaret Sanger or Sanger, however you
Yeah, I think
pronounce
it's
the name.
pronounced Singer, but
She's the founder of Planned Parenthood, and that is the largest of abortion clinics. Like most of the time, if you have an abortion, especially in the United States, like 9 times out of 10, it's by Planned Parenthood. And they had, I remember they had quoted. It was this quote from Margaret Sanger that was from what I've seen. It was kind of taken out of context. It was something like let me see if I can find the quote. It
the
says
chances are that
it's
it was involving racism, because there's a lot of speculation and ideals revolving around Margaret Sanger, who that said basically the idea of Planned Parenthood, the organization, and implementation of abortion was to
yeah.
eradicate, well, not necessarily eradicate, but to slow the spread of colored people.
It's, it was a quote. It was saying like we do not want word to get out that we want to exterminate the Negro population. That
Yeah.
was, and that's taken from a letter. So first of all, like I've heard it, not even just this documentary that they showed me at Liberty. Well, I think that's just kind of dot myself. Well, anyway, so yes, I went to Liberty University. Um, anyway, so even if the context was just as it seems that she was just a total racist, this isn't an argument against abortion. I think this is a red herring and a distraction.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's undoubtedly
She was a racist. She had racist views about black people.
yeah, I
That
mean, there's
would
undoubtedly controversy with the person herself, but
have
the
any
outcome is
impact on the morality in general. Do you hear me?
yeah, yeah. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
I was
I was
hearing I was
uh,
hearing something.
well, I was talking, but I don't know if you could hear me. But I basically was just saying it seems to me that that people are kind of almost more modernly using the idea and the concepts of her being racist, which she very likely was, from what I gathered. But they're just kind of using it as an alternative method of kind of wiggling around the idea of support of Planned Parenthood. Um, Whereas that's not really the kind of the time or place. They're two different arguments, in my opinion.
Yeah,
You have the clear
they
argument
are,
for
and
for abortion, and you can have a clear argument against racism, and hold to both arguments.
yeah, of course. And so I'm not going to read the entire letter because it's kind of long, but just to give context to the quote. So what Margaret Sanger, she was writing a letter to another doctor, and she had the same concerns about the black community that she had about the entire human race. She was definitely a eugenicist. You could probably argue that she was an elitist, and she believed that if you were like mentally handicapped or you weren't quite intelligent enough, um, or prone to criminal activity, you know, she believed that these things were genetic and that they could be artificially uh, for, right? And so, but there's nothing from what I've learned about her. There's nothing to indicate that she had it. that she believed any of those things were tied to being black or being African American or anything like that. So it doesn't seem like she was racist. That quote, what she was talking about was at the time in the 1920s, black community was very suspicious of just about any sort of help that came from their government, or for pretty good reason, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're living under Jim Crow, right? Had a bunch of lynchings going on. Not too long ago, there were slaves, right? So, so they were justifiably so very suspicious of the government. And so, what she was saying was that because of this, and especially some comments from Marcus Garvey, who was very anti-abortion. He saw it as that this could um, hurt the black race. she she was saying that we should invest in black doctors and let them bring um, Planned Parenting to the black community, because they'll the black patients will be able to be more open and more trusting of them than they would of white doctors, right? And so she was saying to um, let black doctors and black nurses and all that stuff let the black medical professionals lead Planned Parenting in the black community. And if it if it was if this was to get out that for some reason people continue to believe that or start believing that the Planned Parenthood was meant to terminate the black population, they could straighten that out. That was the proper context of that quote.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that in the 1939 letter that you're talking about, she talks about hiring a full time black physician, essentially, so
Yeah.
African Americans would feel more comfortable about going to the doctor, and the doctor she was talking to, Dr. C.J. Gamble, essentially was reluctant to hire anyone of color. So, I mean, her response was it's easier for African Americans to see a doctor of color than it would be than for them to just continue seeing the typical white male doctor, right? But
Yeah.
I mean, I will say that she did come across extremely racist later in the letter. And if you'd like,
Yeah, I mean, like
I
I'll
can
say
read
like
I
she
can
had
read the
some
comments if you'd
she had
like.
some very. I'm cutting you off. Say it again.
I was gonna say I don't mind reading the comments in the direct quote, but it's not pretty.
Yeah, I mean, like she had some very paternal. I would call it paternalistic. Like I've read it. I would call it paternalistic. But look, I'll say this. Sure, I mean, she was a woman of her time. 1920s America. However, or 1930s America, not much better. However, the rumor that I see being pushed among the a lot of your anti-abortion groups, that she was like some sort of you know Nazi, you know psycho person who wanted to kill all the black people through abortion. That's just not true. It's not at all. But I mean, sure, yeah. I'm not going to say she has no racist views, and I look at some of her quotes throughout the letter. It's very paternalistic, as if blacks needed some sort of like special treatment.
I mean, to me, at least at a very surface level, throughout some of the other articles and letters that she wrote throughout her lifetime, and including direct letters to the press and/or conversations she's had with doctors involving the idea of Planned Parenthood, there's it, like I'm not saying the idea of Planned Parenthood was solely for the eradication of African Americans in the United States. However, that was undoubtedly a driving factor for Margaret Sanger. She was undoubtedly a racist. She undoubtedly thought that if you put Planned Parenthood centers in African American favored population and like urban areas, then you're more likely to reduce the number of African Americans in the United States. She was absolutely
Yeah,
correct
but
because that
that's
happened,
that's
but
that's not her goal. Not from this letter.
well,
Not even
not
close.
that letter, but in an article entitled "A Better Race Through Birth Control," she said
So
if you provide the Negro population with birth control, they will voluntarily eliminate their own kind. That is a direct quote.
yeah. So I mean, like,
So
yeah. If you look at the context, she's speaking from like a from from a position of eugenics. So, and it's not about racism. So what she's concerned about, it's not about eliminating black people. What she's concerned about is eliminating what they would consider to be mentally retarded or prone to criminal activity, or or some other physical, impairment that she regards not, worth, you know letting live. And she wasn't just trying to eliminate that from black community. She was trying to eliminate that from the human race altogether. So like that was eugenics. That's not necessarily
I, I
just for black people.
I completely agree. However, she undoubtedly targeted black people.
Well,
Like
yeah, I mean, she targeted black
she
people
wasn't
along
targeting
with everybody
specifically
else.
just black people, but she was also through the idea of like eugenics, people she thought were mentally unfit, etc. That we just talked about. However, like there was an undoubted like let's also throw racism in the mix. It wasn't we're just going to do this like thing, and if it happens to apply to black people more so than not, then great. No, like the ideas and the letters that she wrote clearly disfavored and like disproportionately targeted black people in America. It's just
Not from what I've seen. Like even that quote, if you look at that you just said, like that if you look at the context, it was from a position of eugenics, like improving the human race, not eliminating one particular race. And when I that's what I was saying, when she was paternalistic, she was already looking at um the very vulnerable position that the black community was already in, right? There's like super discrimination.
I lost you. You there?
Slaves just like one generation
You're cutting in and out there on me.
ago. She devoted
Hey Gio,
community
you're
then
cutting it
maybe
you're
was
cutting in and out
justified.
quite badly.
You can't hear me?
You're cutting in and out quite badly.
Oh, really? Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh, me. Am I still cutting in and out?
Well, I mean, when you went on your tangent, you were speaking for longer periods of time, so it's a little hard to
Oh
hear.
no. Gotcha. Man.
In those
So, what was
short
what's the last
sections,
word you heard?
you weren't cutting out. Well, you were to go out and then come back in, so like I
Okay.
heard words and then you would stop, and then I heard more words and then you would stop.
Gotcha. Well, man. What I was going to say was that I don't want to spend too much time on Margaret Sanger, but I mean, the artists can like do their own research on it. But Planned Parenthood, they removed the statue of her, and they also put out an article. You can find on their website, and it just shows the context of all of those letters. And what you'll see is that she was definitely eugenics, definitely paternalistic of African Americans, but she didn't have the goal of eliminating black people.
Yeah, I mean,
Not even close. Matter of fact, like Martin Luther King spoke very well of her.
yeah. So I mean, I'm not going to say she strictly had the idea of eradicating black people in mind when coming up with the idea of Planned Parenthood. I'm just going to say that there was undoubted ties to racism in her past. Although
For sure.
I saw many sources have cited that she has no ties to the idea of Nazi Germany. There was nothing like that, and I'm not saying that her goal was to eradicate black people in the United States. However, even as a person of her time, I'm not going to say using the guise of eugenics, because I truly believe that's what she was after, is the idea of eugenics and eradication of the quote-unquote weak, if you will.
That's definitely what she was.
It seems that there was undoubted concepts in mind of at least pushing towards African Americans as well. I'm not going to say it was the sole purpose or even the primary purpose. I'm just going to say, obviously, with racial ties and the development of something like Planned Parenthood, there may have been more targeted towards African Americans than towards anyone else.
Yeah.
I'm not going to take it to the point of
what you should do.
Germany,
have you read that Planned Parenthood article?
I've read the open letter from her and what was his name, C.J. Gamble. I've read the article entitled.
You should. So I'll tell you that if you should look at it, she has some statements that she strongly opposed the racist exploitation of eugenics, and she even disavowed the Declaration of Independence because Thomas Jefferson owned slaves. She was quite the progressive. That's why I was saying she's paternalistic. The racist part, I just don't see.
I mean, I guess you could overlook it and call it paternalistic. I just can't see how you'd get past saying that, if you put Planned Parenthood centers in a Negro population, they'll naturally kill themselves off.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember saying those words.
Well, that's
but from
the
quote that you had said earlier, the context.
Yeah, the context was specifically towards black people in America. You can say, of course, it's related to eugenics, but it was specifically talking about black people.
What was the name of that quote?
Jeez, I'll have to go.
Say that quote again. Let's see if I can find the letter.
It is called. Where did it go? I'll just pull up my search history real quick, or my tab history.
Okay. Well, I don't want to spend too much time on this. Like the audience can go back and study Planned Parenthood, and they can make up their own mind.
Yeah, that's fair enough. It's called A Better Race Through Birth Control.
Got it. And that is, yes, I'm looking at it right now. If you look at the context, it's definitely through eugenics. It's a ton of paternalistic. I mean, and she says some racist things in there, but it is not.
It's
definitely not
eugenics, but I can't see how you can take the quote that I read to you and not admit that it's clearly racist based. I understand.
Yes, I mean that, but you're saying
I'm not. Nope. Stop. Don't put words in my mouth or thoughts in my mouth. What I'm saying is I don't think that Margaret Sanger was just the worst racist person to ever exist, nor do I think
but
she
you
had
had
ties
said
to
that
Germany,
this was part of the goal was to eliminate the black race. That's false.
She clearly targeted African Americans with some of her Planned Parenthood centers, with some of her ideals, and told people how to help trick people into going.
She targeted white people, and she targeted Latinos, and she targeted the entire human race.
She targeted with eugenics and the idea and the concept of Planned Parenthood, but she also specifically targeted African Americans, which is where racism comes in.
And she specifically targeted all of those other races as well.
No, that's called generically. That when something is done specifically, like towards a particular race, you call it racism. When something is given for everyone,
if you look at this letter, the reason why she was specific.
Have you looked into the facts? Have you looked into the effects of this after the fact? Have you looked into the number of Planned Parenthood centers in urban areas? Have you looked into the numbers of black women towards white women?
Yes, the majority of them are actually in white neighborhoods. 60% of them. That's another conservative talking point. That's just completely false.
African Americans made up 38% of all abortions since 2006 up to 2016, since tracking in
Yeah,
the 1970s.
yeah. I mean, that got nothing to do with Margaret Sanger, though.
It does, because they were targeted to black neighborhoods. Planned Parenthood centers were put in
So,
black
but
neighborhoods.
I just told you, like, so there's actually more birth center. There's obviously more birth control centers in white neighborhoods than there are in black neighborhoods. I'm actually not even just that. Like, there's 60% of them are in white neighborhoods. The other 40% are spread out everywhere else. Black, Latino, Asian, etc. If you look at the data, this is just false.
It's just astounding to me that the abortion rate for black women is 5 times higher than white women.
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with Margaret Sanger, though.
It does, though. Like, it's the literally
How?
the targeting of her advertising and business. She is an exceptional marketer, and I'm not saying she's the devil or that she is tied with Nazi Germany or that was her only goal. It's just that she was obviously racist, and she used this in her advantage. And the outcome, here we are later.
It sounds like that you believe that she had the goal of eliminating black people. Is that what you're saying?
Not specifically targeted towards just eradication of black people, no. However, I think she also was using and targeting African Americans in the 1930s.
But she was definitely targeting African Americans. But was she targeting them with the goal of eliminating the black race? Because she was targeting African Americans. She was also targeting white people and Latinos. Like, so
I don't think
that's what I'm trying to figure out.
To reduce the population, sure. To reduce the populations of African Americans specifically, yes. I would say that to sure.
Okay, so no, that her goal wasn't to reduce the population. Her goal was to weed out the traits that she didn't like. Like, for example, like what I was talking about, like mentally handicapped, criminal activity, etc., low IQs, stuff like that. So, but it's not but it's not just to reduce. Like, there's not like some magic number of humans that or magic number of black people that eugenicists want. Am I still cutting in and out?
Nope.
Okay.
No, you're good.
The goal.
I think we should undoubtedly.
The goal.
To me, it seems it's impossible that you would think that, like, when saying, okay, here's something for everyone, we'll use something that you hate, like the government, and we'll say taxes. You know how, like, everyone pays taxes? Well, everyone should pay taxes, and, like, assuming in an ideal, like, situation of, like, flat tax, everyone would pay the same amount of tax, right? If Margaret Sanger was pushing forth the idea of a flat tax, which impacted everyone, and then said, there's also an additional tax for being black, you would. But
that's not what she did. That's a really poor analogy, because what would you say was the additional tax for being black? Like, what's like that corresponds to what?
The Negro Project, which started in 1939.
Negro Project.
Yeah.
So you're talking about when she's trying to bring Planned Parenting to African Americans.
I'm talking about when she specifically targeted African American communities for about 4 years.
Yeah, so that's what I was talking about, because there was a lot of suspicion that African Americans had for Planned Parenthood.
There's not, but like, come on now, you're really splitting hairs.
What do you? No, I'm talking about at the time. So at the time that this was going on,
I get that.
No. You said there's not what? Like, what was I wrong about?
What?
You said you said there was not. There was not what? Like suspicion about Planned Parenting?
Oh no. I didn't say there was not. I said I get that.
Okay.
If I said there's not, I apologize. That's not what I intended to say. But no, I understand there was undoubtedly suspicion amongst African Americans going to pretty much anywhere, given that they were living in Jim Crow America, where slavery had been barely outlawed for 60 years. I get that, but I'm not saying, again, she was intending to eradicate the black population in the United States. I don't think that was ever her intention. I just think she also, mainly because the upbringing, the time she lived in, the fact that she was living in Jim Crow America as a extremely high in power white woman, and she definitely had racial tendencies, she also used her pull and her ties to push people, specifically in the African American community, to use things like Planned Parenthood to help reduce the number of African Americans.
Well, it wasn't okay. I had agreed with you up until that last point because I think it's just unprecise. The reducing the number of African Americans wasn't the goal. Like it was her goal was eugenics. So what she wanted to do was artificially improve it.
I get eugenics.
Race.
I get that's what her overall plan was. But as a sub-part of this plan, she used her money, her power, her position, and her creation, which is Planned Parenthood, to also push into the black communities Planned Parenthood, specifically.
Well,
where she didn't do that in other places. She let other companies and organizations and dollars do that. She specifically brought that into the African American community.
Sure, but when you said earlier that she was bringing this in to reduce the African American population, it would give the impression that she thinks there's too many black people, and that's not what was going on. That's what I was saying. It's imprecise. It's not necessarily wrong. It's just imprecise language.
Okay. Well, we've been on this almost 40 minutes. Let's move on.
All right. Yeah. Fair enough.
What would you like to tackle next?
Let's talk about.
Read it. I assume they were talking about the quote that I.
Since we're arguing, let's talk about
yeah, sure.
Bad arguments. Let's talk about bad arguments.
I just wanted to call out. I did read the fact that you said read it on YouTube. I did read the quote. You think I was talking about. I believe, where the Margaret Sanger quote. If that's not what you were talking about, please elaborate. I will gladly read whatever it is you'd like me to read. With exception of the entire letter or something that would take up a long time. But
when did he put that quote?
That was when I said, if you'd like me to read the quotes, I will. It came up during that time, so I read the quote that I was mentioning. I hope that's okay. The quote you were talking about.
He may have been talking about that letter too.
Yeah, the letter itself is quite long, so.
How about I'll read the. Give me 1 second. I can read. This is just like a few sentences. All right, it says, and this is when the one about we don't want word to get out that we want to kill the Negro race. It just says, it seems to me from my experience in North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, and Texas that while the colored Negroes have great respect for white doctors, they can get closer to their own members or more or less their cards on the. Sorry, I'm butchering. This thing is little. All right, she's. You know what? How about this? I'm gonna post a link in the chat.
Okay. While you're doing that, the other, really interesting. Never mind. Let's just move on.
Okay. Yeah, I'm butchering it. For some reason, my eyes are like so blurry. I can't even read it right now because it's too.
Quite all right. Right click copy, right click paste.
How about this?
If you'd like, I can post it. Just
Gladding, if you could be more specific about which quote, because I'm not sure if I was reading the right one.
Yeah, if I didn't quote,
and we'll watch it and see.
We'll go back and.
But since we were just arguing, I was thinking about talking about some of the bad arguments.
For abortion or for eugenics, or I mean, given the topic.
Well, just for abortion. I think we weren't talking about eugenics. That's actually a later topic.
Yeah, I mean, sure.
We'll say for another time. But
bad arguments for abortion. So I think a bad argument is that it's a wonder procedure. And what I mean by that is that there's the right side that thinks that it's the worst thing that's ever happened to the population of children in America or the population of future children in America. And then there's the other side that thinks like, oh, it doesn't matter as long as the baby's not actually born yet. The thing is that there's undoubtedly a middle ground somewhere in there, and the fact of the matter is that women that have abortions have much harder times later trying to give birth. It can oftentimes damage and or scar the body and or cause it for women to have harder times getting pregnant in the future. So saying like it's a, okay, well, whatever, it's just one thing that it's not going to be an issue, so be it. I think it's bad to say you can just kind of wipe it off. It's also wrong to assume that it's just nothing, but like I said, there's some middle ground there. And it's not just okay, cool, it's like taking a pill. It's not like that at all. Like there can be physical damage to the body, and it can cause future pregnancies to go awry, and that's something that people should be aware of when considering abortion.
Yeah, because sometimes the procedures can get pretty intrusive.
Yeah,
like sometimes like scraping out the fetus and all that type of stuff. So like there can be some damage, as well as some of the mental repercussions. Like sometimes it can cause women to go into depression. Especially if they're they have like deep religions feelings about it.
Yeah, oftentimes in religion, but even in times of where abortion is performed later in the pregnancy because of things like postpartum depression that happen anyway, where you're growing this thing inside of you, and it's quite literally consuming you from the inside out, right? And all of the nutrients of this baby or unborn baby or fetus or whatever you would like to call it at this point in time, depending on how far along you are in your pregnancy, oftentimes emotional attachment develops as well as the physical attachment because of the things that are going on. So on top of it not just being like taking a pill or getting a shot or, like a quote unquote, not saying it's not a routine procedure because it happens so frequently, but just keep in mind it's not something that's just as simple as putting a Band-Aid on the thing. It can potentially alter your ability to get pregnant in the future. It can damage the body in ways that are unforeseen. There can be complications in surgery. There can be complications in the procedure itself. So it's not just a Band-Aid. It's not just taking a pill and being done with it. If you want to take a pill and be done with it, there's something called the morning after that is quite effective at preventing pregnancy, right? Abortion is not that. Don't get it wrong. That's a bad argument for abortion.
A bad argument against, and it's the most common one that I hear. Life starts at conception.
Yeah, so this is a very, 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 very bad argument against abortion.
Yes, it's a red herring for one, and it's scientifically inaccurate.
Yeah, I think there's a fundamental problem, and sometimes people try to address this fundamental problem by adding one word to that phrase. And sometimes they add one word to that phrase, and that one word being human. Human life begins at conception.
Well,
and that doesn't solve the problem.
Not at all. That's what I remember. I was not too long ago. I was arguing with someone online about this, which is where I got the idea for. And they had made the statement that life began at conception. I asked them, do you know that a sperm's alive and the egg's alive before they meet?
Yeah, I mean,
and it was.
It
was like
pretty much every cell in the human body is alive until it's destroyed and or damaged, and in cases of skin cells where it gets scratched off, brushed off, falls off, etc.
Yeah.
so
it's all there's definitely life prior to conception.
Yeah, undoubtedly.
So it makes no sense to say that it begins there.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very poor argument and just a misidea and misconception of science itself and how the human body works, because literally every living cell in the body, which, by the way, there's more bacteria in the human body than there are atoms of the human body we would consider living cells of the human body that are specifically human. But that's just a fun little factoid for you. But with that in mind, your skin cells are alive Your
Yeah.
your brain cells are alive. Your sperm cells or egg cells are alive.
You know,
Like at
even
what point in
you
time?
said you had said that the adding the word human to it. I'm not sure if you can hear that clicking. But,
Yeah,
my daughter beating on the table.
yeah,
Okay.
it's quite all right.
So yeah, they said that they add the word human to it. Like, I mean, I've never encountered that in an argument. I was wondering, like we're really trying to go with that. Like, obviously, the sperm is definitely human, right? The egg
Yeah,
is human.
I think they were trying to implicate or imply that it's a new human life at conception, because
Oh,
the what and they may want to add that in the future for a future argument, although it's still a bad one.
still, yeah, still bad.
Still a bad
Because
one. But I will point out the fact that obviously the new human life is a genetic mix of the egg and sperm when it comes together, which if in cases that were to develop and go full term, which is typically about 40 weeks, it would become its own life. Not saying at birth. I'm not going to get into that argument, but I will say that like up until the point of like being a sperm and an egg, they're both still very human. Like the characteristics you have, it has 100% of the father in the case of the sperm and 100% of the egg in the mother before those two ever join up. There's 100% of both of their DNAs. You can almost argue that there's more human in the sperm and the egg separately before they combine to become a genetic mixture of the two.
yeah. So, what is your personal position? Not to throw you on a spot here.
Well, let's throw me under the bus. It's fine.
Yeah.
So I don't know that there's a definitive line in the sand. However, I would say that it's undoubtedly not at conception, and it's probably somewhere around the time of the idea and conception of the idea of feeling pain and or suffering.
So not how about not? I'm not asking when life begins. What is your view
Consciousness.
on abortion?
I mean, I think as far as what the government gets to say, or as far as what the humans that are in charge of it get to say.
How about this? Is it moral? I'm not that concerned about the government.
Okay. That's
Because like
usually
for me, like
your go-to.
I look at like bodily autonomy and privacy. So I think the government should just stay out of that. But so I'm not that. That's why I'm not that concerned about the government from from a position of morals. Is it moral?
I mean, I think that depends on at what point or what stage of pregnancy the woman is, but I think up to a certain point, I don't think it's particularly moral or amoral. I don't think there's a kind of a swing on the fence on either side.
So
I
it's
think
like by 39 weeks, you're saying that's immoral.
yeah, I would say that being is capable of suffering, and therefore probably amoral.
I go back and forth on this because what I normally
Now,
do
keep in mind, I
is
formulated this argument
right?
about a minute and a half ago when you asked the question, but that's where I would stand on the matter until I have good reason to think otherwise.
Gotcha. I always, I mean, I teeter back and forth, and I guess the position that
do you
I
feel that I won't use the term fetus or unborn child. I'll just say that a 30-week-old term or
you can say
32-week-old
fetus.
term pregnancy. Do you
Hmm.
think that the being inside the uterus of the mother is capable of suffering?
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely
Yes.
capable of suffering.
And you think that suffering is bad. Like human suffering is bad, but suffering in general is bad.
Um, suffering. I mean, I don't like the suffer. I mean, I'm not sure if it's like for like my moral, like for my moral system. Like I don't need suffering to be bad. I just have to not like suffering, right? And so,
Well, I
sure. I
mean,
mean, like
either way, you'd state the
I
answer
don't
to
want to
that is
suffer.
yes.
It is bad in the sense that it is something that I don't like.
Okay, but either way, the answer to that is yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so it doesn't matter. But so at, at some point in time, you're probably at least similar to my point of view, where this fetus, this unborn child, whatever you want to call it, starts to develop the concept of suffering because of brain activity and development. Prior
Sure.
to that stage, you would say it would be incapable of suffering. Is that correct?
Yes, but
Okay.
the
So
the suffering is not necessarily a relevant part of my decision making process, because like regardless of the whether or not the baby's suffering, the the thing that I look at is is the baby entitled to the woman's body.
okay, so this is I think this is going to kind of fall in the line of like personhood and identity, which
Yeah.
can be an entire topic in and of itself. But since we're talking about in regards to in regards to abortion, uh, you're talking personhood, if you will.
Yeah. You know what? So yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
sort of,
So
because
because
you know,
you're saying like
even if
people
you're a
have
person,
inalienable
that doesn't
rights. That's what you think.
you know
Yeah.
you know, but even if we're granting personhood to the baby, I still wouldn't entitle baby to, or the fetus. I don't care what we call them, but like
Yeah. I'm fine.
still doesn't. We can make the fetus a, give them a social security number, full fledged U.S. citizen. That doesn't entitle
Okay, but that's not
the fetus to
personhood.
the mother's body.
That's not personhood.
But I'm just like, even if we grant personhood to it, to the
Okay, so
fetus,
we
it's still
say it's
not
a
grant.
person, then it has personable rights, and those
It
rights
does.
cannot be infringed upon.
Sure.
And one of the
Yeah.
like if you say just according to the Declaration of Independence, one of those is life.
Yeah, man. I don't care about the Declaration of Independence. I mean, that's just a.
That's
Uh,
fine, but
not-
like what would separate if you grant it personhood? There shouldn't be
Mhm.
other than age too much that separates its personhood from yours. So what rights do you have that that unborn baby does not?
None, and we have all those rights, but
Okay,
but
so
neither of us are entitled to the woman's body.
yeah, but
That's what we're looking at.
you're aware that a baby born at 30 weeks would undoubtedly survive outside of the mother's body.
What, 30 weeks? I mean, they're not undoubtedly. I mean, the
Yeah, I mean that's it. Like
could.
there's a very
I mean,
very
they
high
have.
chance.
Yeah, I mean, well, you could. I mean, I don't know what the mortality rate of babies born at 30 weeks,
Okay, so but like
that's not.
my point is
That's really early.
my point is like do you, by granting an unborn baby or a fetus personhood,
Mhm.
its location is irrelevant because
It
in and of
is,
itself
because
is a
if
person.
no. So if your location as a person is inside another person, now it's definitely relevant, because we have to consider the mother is also a
but
person and
yes,
entitled to
and
rights,
it's not
and-
by
including
it's not by
her
choice.
property, which is her body.
Yeah, it's not by choice that that child was there up until that point. So at whatever point you grant it personhood, at whatever
Doesn't matter.
age or time you grant it personhood, the mother has had opportunity up until that point to eradicate without infringing upon personhood.
She's not infringing upon the fetus's rights. She's just removing the fetus. Like the fact now that removing a fetus would result in its death is just a fact of nature. But she didn't violate its rights by restricting the use of her body, because it's her body. If she owns her body, which is hers, then she's entitled to decide who can and can't use it. That's why I was saying personhood, it just isn't a factor in my decision making process. The problem that I run into is this, like, let's say you're in a pool and you're drowning, right?
Mm-hmm.
From my view as a humanist, as a libertarian, and I mean that morally, not politically, that if you're in a pool, you're drowning, I can just look the other way and say, you know what, I'm not going to help you. Walk away, right? I'm not under any. I I'm not under any legal I'm not under any binding obligation to help you.
I agree.
Right.
I would say that we're in the same
However,
boat.
if I were to push you in, now I am. I have to at least get you out. I have to get you out of that precarious situation that I put you in.
So just hypothetically here, don't jump and yell down the thing until you hear me out, because this is hypothetical and I came up with it right then on the spot.
You're probably about to go exactly where I was thinking.
The mother has the opportunity up until sentience or the option of suffering to do anything she would like. When you grant personhood, you have now told the mother she is pushing a baby in the water.
Well, not
because
necessarily.
Up until then, the mother could have done anything she wanted because there's no person. There's no other person involved. There's no other person involved until the fetus or the unborn child is granted personhood. We agree on that. Yes?
I think my analogy is misunderstood, because for me the water.
I'm not misunderstanding it. I'm going with analogy of my own, and I'm asking a question. I get what you're saying. Let's grant this. Let answer the question real quick. Before suffering is possible, or before personhood is granted to the unborn baby or fetus or whatever you want to call it, before that happens, there is no other person involved. Agree? There's only the mother.
Sure.
When personhood is granted to the baby, to the unborn baby or fetus, now there are two people involved in the scenario. You're with me so far? Yes?
Yep.
So let's take your let's take your swimming pool analogy. Up until the point of personhood, which is granted, there's only the mother. There exists no child.
Yeah.
Until the child is granted personhood, now the woman says, I want to push you in the pool. I don't want you in my body anymore. I don't want this going on anymore. There's another person involved, and your actions are directly impacting another person's personhood.
So this is the problem with the analogy, right? Because like there's not in all instances that the mother is directly responsible for the pregnancy. Right. That's what I was going to say.
I'm not saying they are,
for example, for like a rape.
Yeah.
So like,
I'm not saying they are.
The mother's in no way. So the mother didn't push the baby into the pool.
You don't think but that's why I asked, when do you think personhood starts? And that's why I said it was important. And you said, no, it's not really that important.
It's not important in my decision-making process, because
but now I'm bringing up the idea of personhood.
For me, the argument,
and now we need to decide what's the reasoning the mother's pregnant. Well, it doesn't matter. It matters when personhood is granted.
Yes, because what matters is, like, there's a person in the pool drowning. Do I have to help them? Well, how they got in the pool? That's a very relevant question. They trip and fall in there, or did I throw them in there?
But what I'm saying
if I threw them in there, then I'm gonna have an obligation to pull them out.
The mother has multiple weeks and months to decide this before personhood is granted.
Yes, the timing doesn't matter.
It does matter.
It isn't like if you fell in a pool.
The point of having another person there.
I could just watch you slowly fight, and for like you could fight back and forth trying to survive for like 9 months, and I do nothing.
Here's what I'm saying.
Here's what I'm saying. If I didn't push you in there.
Here's what I'm saying though. Before development of personhood, there is no other person, so it's not even a decision that has to be made. If you're waiting until personhood, it is now an active decision that has to be made.
So for my decision making, the way that I go about this is it's about the woman's autonomy of her body. The baby being a person is irrelevant, because even if you grant personhood to the baby, that still doesn't entitle him to the woman's body. Like I'm a person. I'm not entitled to somebody else's body. It doesn't change anything.
And they're not entitled to yours, which means they're not allowed to end it.
So that's what I was saying. So we're not ending, we're removing it.
the
Okay,
ending
by proxy,
the ending no
you're
ending
ending
is
it.
is a result. Ending is just the result of nature. Like let's say
It's
there
not
was
a
a
result of
situation.
nature. That's
No,
not
hold on,
nature.
Let's say there was a situation.
That's the opposite of nature.
No,
that is a
lem-
medical procedure.
No, it's not. It's not necessarily a medical procedure. I mean, there's all
Abortion's
types
not a
of reasons
medical
why a baby.
procedure. Well, I mean, I guess it doesn't have to be. You could stick a coat hanger up there, or you could
But
punch
I mean,
yourself
that
in
would
the
still be a
stomach.
medical procedure. Like an abortion is just the termination of a pregnancy. Here's what I want to say. Let's say there's a scenario, whereas if if I don't constantly carry you, and you're going to die. I have to be holding you, right? Let's say I choose not to hold you and then you die. The consequences of me not holding you is not that does not mean that I'm under an obligation to do so.
Okay, let's take that same scenario and say,
Yeah.
for 4 months, I warned you that if you don't do something now, I'm going to get to the point where if you don't carry me everywhere, I'm going to die.
Yeah, I don't see how would I change anything. I still wouldn't be obligated to carry you.
Okay.
That was it.
That's it.
All right. I mean, yeah, we did reach 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
I just feel like there was or we could go maybe like for more minutes. Did you want to tackle one of the?
I have nothing to say on that topic. We can talk about anything you want, but
All right.
I disagree with you on that topic for the obvious reason that once personhood is defined, you're defiling that person's personhood.
Well, you're not, because the personhood. It's about bodily autonomy. It's not about personhood.
And I'm gonna sound really right wing and conservative here, and it's gonna sound terrible, but I'm gonna stand on it to the point until someone can logically say otherwise, or fight me into existence otherwise. And I'm all for women's rights. I am okay with the concept of abortion until the point of suffrage. When identity or personhood is granted to the individual that you're carrying, that person now has those same rights as you do. Because there's no difference in that person and your person, with exception of age. And if you have the opportunity to eradicate this problem before it starts, and you do not take it, you are passively accepting responsibility to continue to carry this problem with you until a situation arises in which you can safely remove it. Because you have ample opportunity, in my opinion, to do so before that becomes a problem. It's not like I'm granting personhood at 1 week old, or at 2 weeks, or at 2 months. I don't grant personhood then. I don't think personhood is reality then. I don't think until there's a functioning, fully formed, active brain that there is personhood. And that takes a while in pregnancy. So if you're committed to carrying it up until that point, your fault. My stance on it.
Yeah. I don't. Not making the decision to abort doesn't mean you're committed.
I mean, it's a passive commitment. That's exactly what that is. It's like saying and your wife
if it's
are married.
passive, it's not a commitment.
If you and your wife are married,
it's just a lack of a decision.
Stop. Let me finish. If you and your wife are married, right, and you don't actively go about the legal procedure of getting divorced, but you don't live together or see each other anymore or whatever, you're not together anymore.
Sure,
It's
but
it's passive.
That scenario,
it's not an active divorce. You just stop seeing each other. You don't hang out anymore. You don't sleep together
what's
anymore.
the passive part?
You're passive about it. You didn't go through the active process of having the
Then
divorce.
we're still legally married. So there is no divorce.
I mean, in a length of time, you could no longer be married. You could have a common law divorce.
Okay, well, if that's a procedure that you could just be apart, then you had actively did a common law divorce. I've never heard of I've heard of common law marriage. I never heard of common law divorce. But yeah, I mean, sure, if that's the process. But I actually I can't stay on much longer. Yeah, got family things that I gotta do.
Okay.
But
well, anyway, that's my 2 cents on the matter. Because once you've granted personhood and you've gone that far, that's the case. I don't.
we'll
think it
have to
has
do a
come
part
before
2 on
then.
this.
I don't think it has to come before then. But it seems to me that if you're going that far, then you've had plenty of opportunity. Which again, I will grant you, there's probably months involved in which this has the option. Then you've committed to carrying the life up until this point, fully well knowing you're pregnant, because
It's not a
chances are
commitment. Not making a decision. It's not a commitment.
Yeah, it kind of is though.
No, a commitment is an active thing that you're saying that you're going to do.
Okay, but
It's like
you're actively
I'm
actively married, right? You're committed, right?
yeah.
And you don't have to do anything else to stay married.
No, because I've already made the commitment.
Right, you've already made the commitment to stay married.
Yeah.
Right.
That's not the case with the pregnancy.
You got
It's
pregnant.
just something that just happened.
Yeah, you got
Yeah,
pregnant.
but it doesn't mean you're committed to being pregnant.
Right, which is why you have the opportunity to terminate that pregnancy.
Yeah. We gotta get ready to end it though.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. We'll have to do a part 2 on this.
Yeah, we'll definitely do a part 2. Perhaps not next week, but at some point in time in the future. Thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to let us know. Give us a call. Send us comments, etc., etc. Check us out on Twitch and YouTube and Facebook and everywhere else. I'm Fantastic Facade. He's Geocentric Skeptic. We're going to try some new software in the future, hopefully sooner than later, but we'll probably do a part 2 on this as well. Keep in touch. We'll let you know. And we'll see you next week. Anything you wanted to add before I close this out?
No, that's good. Thank you for tuning in, guys.